Hello, bonsoir, bonjour. Come in and say hello.
Bonjour.
Oh, good.
Bonjour.
Talk. Tell us something. Say hello.
Bonjour tout le monde.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Hello from Michigan.
Hello from Ohio.
All right. I see.
Hello from Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Cool.
Hello from Maine.
Maine.
Hello from Southern California.
California. It's early for
Hello
you.
from upstate New York.
Wow. Love it. And I see a lot of familiar faces. Yes.
Welcome, everyone.
Yeah, welcome. Welcome to France. Yeah, we're from wherever you are. Yeah, here you go. I see,
Okay,
I see a couple people from across the, just like a few blocks away, like Nancy Toulon and Ella Dyer and a few people in the Nice neighborhood. I see Janet in Champagne. Yes. Right. Okay, you guys are, what, are you awake? You're quiet today. I mean,
We're being courteous.
well, don't be courteous. Say hello. You know,
Hello from Southern California with my second cup of coffee.
good for you. Good
nice.
for you. No, you know, because these have been on Zoom all year, we like to think of them as being live. We want to feel like you're actually here with us. And so in order for you to do that and make it feel more like, you know, we're really together, I just want to take a few minutes so we can sort of, you know, say hello and chit chat and get used to the situation and whatever. So if anybody has any stories at the moment they want to share or questions they want to ask before we get started, feel free. Okay, and it looks like we have a nice group of people. We have about 65 people on right now, which is
Wow.
completely respectable.
Yeah.
Bonjour from Falls Church, Virginia. We just finished reading Pancakes in Paris last night.
All
Oh.
right.
You did your homework. Yay.
Perfect
Fantastic.
timing.
Oh, Gail. Hi, Gail.
Hi from New York, everyone. Hi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Susan Marachik, and I actually live in McLean, Virginia, but I'm in Kennebunkport, Maine for the summer. I'd rather be in Paris. And I'm so excited to hear about this because I lived in Paris for 4 years and we really wanted a diner. And so I think our timing was off by a couple years for when you started.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's why I did it. I knew there was a demand.
Well,
There's a demand for that.
you'll have to come back now, you see, and try it out.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I'll be back in 6 weeks and I live right around the corner on Rue de Giron from the one in Le Marais, which
Oh.
it's always my first breakfast stop when I come back.
Is it? Nice. Yeah, some people come from the airport and the taxi drops them off with
Yeah,
their suitcase.
I believe it. I believe it.
That's funny. That's funny. I didn't realize
Patty
Renee
on the table here.
Gerant.
Oh, Patty.
Patty, Abel, Abel.
I only come to Paris for the pancakes.
That's
Okay, well, I tell you what, you guys, you know, I'm sure you'd much rather hear from Craig than from me. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our illustrious speaker. Okay. So Craig Carlson, everybody else, please mute. Okay, mute yourselves so we can get started. Let's see, is everybody muted? Okay, Craig, say hello so you can be my speaker view. There you go. So Craig Carlson,
yes.
you know, Craig Carlson lives a half a block away from me in Paris. We can see each other's windows from our apartments, which is very nice. It's very nice for us because that means we can meet up on occasion. And gosh, Craig, how long have we known each other? Craig, how
Oh
long
boy,
have we
since
known each other?
2016, like 5 years, not 5
Okay.
years now.
Not as
Seems
long
longer,
as,
like I've known you my whole life, but it's 5 years.
I know it's true, right? Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So Craig is, of course, the proprietor of Breakfast in America, and he's going to tell you all about his diners, 2 of them. And he's the author of 2 books. You got your books to hold up? Pancakes in
do.
Paris and Let Them Eat Pancakes. Okay, both of which are hilariously funny because Craig's hilariously funny and has amazing stories to tell. And so, you know, what we're going to do here is we're just going to let Craig do his thing. And then there'll be a Q&A at the end. So you'll have plenty of opportunity to, you know, unmute and talk to us and ask your questions and whatever. And we're just going to have a nice time for the next couple of hours. So on that note, Craig, it's all yours, babe.
Yes. Thank you. Again, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. I'm so glad to be back for a second time with Adrian Leeds' Après Midi. Since 2003, you've been doing this, right? So it's been, you're going in
Amazing.
18th year.
2003.
Yeah, and I opened in 2003. So I don't know if that's a coincidence, but that's when I opened my first restaurant, actually, it was 2003. So,
It's amazing.
So, yes, I'm so happy to be here. So of course, you know, what I was going to do is I was going to do a little different than I normally do with my presentations. What I wanted to do was focus on 3 very important things. First was like my relationship with France and the language itself, because I think most of you out there I know are Francophiles, even from our little conversation in the beginning. And I know you all are itching to get back here, and we want you back here. We can't wait. Especially at our restaurant, we have so many regulars from America who come over, and just France in general doesn't feel the same without the Americans there. Do you agree, Adrian? It's just
Absolutely.
It's just the energy and the passion Americans and, you know, people from all over the world, of course, but bring to the city. You really feel it when it's not there. And so even French people in the cafes are like, we can't wait till Americans come back. You know, so you know that we're pretty loved over here. So which is great. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about my relationship here, how France has changed me via, you know, my relationship with Julien and my maman, my mother-in-law, and how France is such a transformative place. And I know you all probably who've lived here and can vouch for that. And of course, I'll be talking about the business as well. But I definitely wanted to focus a little bit on the experience. And that was the point of my second book too, was to really delve deeper into life in France. And I was inspired by David Sedaris with his books, which is just a collection of standalone stories, right? Where you can just pick up and open up to any chapter you want. And I was able to go in deeper into, you know, what it's like to live here and the way France can transform you. But I'll just give a little bit of backdrop first about how I ended up here. I'm originally from Connecticut, and France was the furthest thing from my mind back then. Ironically, even though I lived in a little area called Frenchtown, which is in the book. And through one serendipitous event after the other, I ended up doing a junior year abroad in France and with the University of Connecticut. And that's when I fell just completely in love with the country and the food and the culture and everything. And there's one little interesting thing in this new book there's a chapter where I talk about the first time I'm here in Paris. And I came over with $300 and I was somehow going to have to be resourceful and make it through the year. And I did. But one of the ways I saved money, for example, when I went to the Eiffel Tower, I took the stairs up, right? Instead of paying for the elevator, it was too expensive. So 600 and something steps
you really
later,
came over with $300 in your pocket?
I really did, with $300 in my
Okay,
pocket.
so you are both brave and whatever.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. No, it was quite an adventure, but really, I think all those skills of resourcefulness helped me later on doing my business. Let me say that. And so I climb up to the top of the Eiffel Tower, and I see that there's a film shoot going on. And lo and behold, I look over, and there's Cheryl Ladd, remember from Charlie's Angels, and she's making a movie of the week. And her assistant sees me and says, "Oh, would you like your picture with Cheryl?" And I'm like, "Ah, ben oui," you know. And I had my picture taken. For years, I could not find that picture, and I was so upset. And I never was able to put it into the book. I intended on putting it into the book. So I might have a little surprise for you later on. But that was just one of the special things about France, obviously, is I came over first week and there I see a star, and eventually I went into cinema. I was inspired by living in Paris and all the cinemas to study cinema. So it all sort of connected. And so first we spent a month in Paris just doing culture classes and language classes. And then we moved to Rouen in Normandy for years, living with a family, which I talk about in both books. And since so many of you, again, I'm going to bring this up, I'm going to read a couple of passages tonight. And the first one I want to read is because I know so many of you love France and you can't wait to come back. And I know a lot of you love the language, and maybe some of you have frustrations with the language. So I thought how fun to read the chapter that I've written about that. And to help me out, I have a special guest, Julien. We got someone to come join us. You probably were all wondering if you're going to get to see our friend Julien. He's coming on over. He grabbed his glass of wine, of course. That's the most important thing. Cheers. So those of you who don't know Julien, Julien's my husband, who I met over here in France, which is, I was able to go much more into detail in the second book about that. And I thought, so I'm going to read about a 10-minute passage of one of my most fun chapters, I think, in the book. It's called The Gift du Gab. Okay. And Julien helped me a lot with this chapter, is one of the reasons he's here. And he's probably going to correct me if I mispronounce anything or say something the wrong way. So the gift du Gab. You obviously have a gift for languages. I mainly received this compliment from American expats who lived in Paris for years, but have given up trying to learn the language of their adopted country. Their main excuse? Unlike you, learning a language for me is hard. When I've challenged them on this point, most eventually get around to the real reason, and they said no to le français. I hate sounding like a 6-year-old. Of course, there's no way to avoid this. Even French people don't start off speaking like a 21-year-old. They have to pass through each year from toddler to tot to adolescent before they become hands-on chin intellectuals who've mastered le bon mot. Why should it be any different for us Americans? Still, I've been seventh to 12th grade, I came out of it barely able to form a coherent sentence. This became particularly apparent when I arrived in France for the first time with a junior year abroad program. I was surprised to learn the Parisians weren't as patient and forgiving as my French teachers. They spoke quickly, very quickly. Even when I was able to get a Parisian to slow down, I still couldn't understand what he or she was saying. What the hell? I thought. Gift? What gift? The truth was I had no such thing. Thankfully, I was about to take a pair of classes that would help take my français to a whole new level. So here I talk a little bit about la dictée, which is how French people learn how to write French. And it goes into it quite a bit, so I'm gonna kind of skim over that part. But basically the teacher will read a text to the class, and they have to write down everything. And as you know, French, most of the vowels and consonants you don't even hear, right? They're silent. So you have to learn to develop. So I talk about that.
And you have to do that actually every single week for a couple of years.
Oh, I didn't realize
More
that.
than 2 years, actually. I do remember having to go through the dictée for at least 3 years, every single week. La dictée. Oh my.
Yeah, and for us as an American, you can imagine it's not even our language, and we're trying to do what they're doing. That said, I'm just surprised that it's not taught in schools, because it really did help me.
Mm-hmm.
But perhaps the best French class I've ever taken was phonétique with Madame Bâtard. And yes, that means bastard. With her flaming orange hair and hoarse smoker's voice, Madame taught us that the secret to speaking French was training your ear to hear the subtle differences among the 40 or so phonemes or individual sounds that exist in the French language. It was a lot like learning music, but as anyone who has tried to learn French knows, if your pronunciation is just slightly off, nobody will be able to understand you. Or even worse, they will understand you, but not in the way you intended. Of course, this can lead to a lot of embarrassing situations. Once during Bastille celebrations, which of course is tomorrow, so I thought this is timely, I confused the word for firecracker, pétard, with a similar sounding word, pédé. I couldn't understand why my French friends were laughing hysterically when I yelled out, Careful, everybody, gay people are exploding in the streets. In our phonetics class, Madame Bata was such a frightening presence. She'd often send students into tears, never letting up until our pronunciation was absolutely perfect. Heaven help us if we didn't croak out our R's from deep inside our throat, or if we failed to sniff out nasal vowels from deep inside our nose. Monday's class was the worst. Madame Bata would make students stand up in front of the room and recount what they'd done over the weekend. Of course, it was already hard enough to come up with the right vocabulary, the right verb, conjugation, and that old Ballbester, masculine and feminine. But having Madame on the sidelines, ready to pounce at the slightest mistake, made the situation unbearable. Madame Bata seemed to take particular pleasure in rallying up Kara, a straight A student who, much to her dismay, found herself in a country that didn't give out A's in class, ever. Worried about tarnishing her perfect grades point average, Kara was always on the verge of an emotional meltdown. Wrong class to be in. Miss Kara, Madame Bata said one rainy Monday morning en français as she took a long drag off her cigarette, would you give us the pleasure of recounting your grand adventures in Rouen this weekend? Well, Kara said excitedly in her best French, Saturday I went to the museum and then, Madame Bata shouted. Kara looked confused, but soldiered on, speaking in short, nervous breaths. And then after the museum, I ate a croque monsieur for lunch and, repeat. Madame Bata growled as she pounded her fist on the desk. There is no in French, only Madame Bata's wrath was so all-encompassing, she wouldn't even let us stammer incorrectly. But despite a few psychological scars, for me, Madame Bata was a blessing, albeit with a few inconvenient side effects. To this day, a frisson or a chill runs down my spine every time I hear an American say instead of as they valiantly struggle to speak the language of Molière. Looking back now.
Remind me
Sorry?
later, Craig. Remind me later, Craig, to tell you a dictée story.
Oh, come on. Great.
Okay, never mind. Go ahead.
So I'm going to jump to a little bit about, you'll see now some tips. So this is the main reason I wrote this chapter. Looking back now, I realized why it took so long to learn the language and why it was so painful. French is a bitch, or in the case of my phonetics class, a bastard. But it can be tantalizingly fun. Even more, studies show that speaking a second language can actually change your mind for the better, helping to ward off progressive diseases like Alzheimer's. Nowadays, the #1 question American customers ask me at my diner is if I speak French. I better, I say, since I've been living here for 19 years. Yeah, well, I've been here for 20 and still can't speak the damn language. Do you have any tips that can help me? Actually, I do. For what it's worth, here are a few things I picked up over the years, which he helped me, and that I wish someone had told me. Follow them, and before long, once you put in your 10,000 hours of practice, of course, you'll get to hear people say, wow, you obviously have a gift for languages. It's up to you whether to tell them the truth or not. The first one, the 5-minute rule. As a beginner, it can be very intimidating to speak French with a real French person, especially one who chatters on as if they've just drunk 5 espressos. Or even worse, speaks better English than you speak French. Once you've managed to get them to parler lentement, s'il vous plaît, speak slowly, please, resist the urge to default to English just because it's easier than struggling with French. I've seen this happen with many of my expat friends. They simply give up too soon. I'm convinced that there's a part of the brain that needs at least 5 to 10 minutes to warm up before it gets into the groove. Once it does, French words will start popping into your head, which give you a slight rush, encouraging you to keep going, which in turn fills your brain with even more vocabulary ad infinitum. It's a win-win situation.
That was the wine kicking in.
Is that right? You know what? I should have added the wine as one of my tips too, because that really helps.
Loosens the tongue.
Speaking of which. Next one, learn a French song. It makes, or 2 or 3. It makes sense. It's learning a new language is a lot like learning music. There's a rhythm and tone that's picked up and processed by a sensitive ear. And much like with music, it takes a lot of practice. Try memorizing a classic French song. Not only will it help your pronunciation, it will improve your comprehension too. Soon in everyday conversation, you'll find yourself saying, that doesn't sound right. That's much more organic than saying, is that the correct conjugation of the third person subjunctive of that irregular verb? Sure, language rules are important, but honestly, did you learn your mother tongue by looking at a chart of verb conjugations? Do most people even know what the subjunctive tense is? Yet we learn our native language as toddlers through songs and rhymes. So start singing. Next, French in Action. There was a great show on PBS years ago that was called just that, French in Action. Do any of you remember that?
I do. I remember it very well.
I'm convinced that a relatively small percentage of learning a language comes from sitting down either in class or with a tutor. Instead, get off your butt and live the language. You're much more likely to remember vocabulary, and especially verbs, when you're active. I can recall many moments in my life when I was either shopping or visiting a museum with a French friend and learned a specific word or a fun idiom. By getting out and living, I learned the French expression for a snobby person, someone who thinks he or she farts higher than their asshole.
I have never heard that one.
Right? Or when a customer is being unrelentlessly nitpicky, they're trying to sodomize houseflies. Have you heard that one?
No, but I'm not living out there like you are.
You didn't like that one? Thanks to French in Action, I'll never confuse a firecracker with an exploding homosexual ever again. Learn the dreaded mask.
You see, Craig, everybody's muted, so you can't hear them all cracking up.
Yeah, they got you. And you're laughing too, thank you.
Yes.
Learn the dreaded masculine and feminine the French way. It's already crazy enough that words in French have a sex. But what they never teach you in the French is that French people don't memorize gender. For them, it's part of the word. This is where language as music can be so helpful. I learned from Julian that I should never ask if a noun is with a le or a la. Instead, ask if the word is with un or une. For example, est-ce que c'est un table ou une table? Is it a masculine table or a feminine table? The reason for this is French people learn the gender of a noun via un et une, not le or la. If you make this subtle shift, soon your well-trained ear will be able to hear what sounds right and what doesn't. Mais bien sûr, you'll find yourself saying, it's une table, not un table. Next, the red pen is your friend. The French love correcting you, especially when you mess up their language. Many Americans are put off by this. They think it's rude, or they take it way too personally. Why are they being so mean to me? Here's another way of looking at it. You have a French teacher for free, everywhere. When a French person points out that a vagina is masculine and the male equivalent is feminine, simply smile and say, merci, I stand corrected. Then stand there happily corrected. Rinse, repeat until one day no one corrects you anymore. Another important point, language is cultural. Since France is a completely different culture, it's important to accept the fact that you will never be 100% French. Get used to it. Celebrate your Americanness, your Canadianness, or whateverness. From the first day I arrived in Paris, I dreamed of passing as a Frenchman. But as a half Finnish, half Polish, 6'3" Skandislav, it didn't quite happen that way. Inevitably, a French person would hear me screw up a phoneme or a gender, and the jig was up. No problem. Have fun with it. Play with the inevitable cliches that the French have about you, that you're a coke swilling, burger munching cowboy with a machine gun. Then have some fun surprising them by flipping their stereotypes on their head. Sing one of the Edith Piaf songs you memorized. Quote Molière. My favorite is from Candide, since the off-cynical French already consider Americans to be hopelessly naive. All is for the best in the best of possible worlds. Say this cheerful phrase to a Frenchman and watch him quiver. Optimism is a Frenchman's kryptonite. Which leads me to my last and most important tip. Embrace your inner 6-year-old. Throw out your critical mind. Bury your ego, your pride. Allow yourself to feel vulnerable. After all, that's how we grow and evolve, n'est-ce pas? Don't be ashamed to make horrendous mistakes. Talk baby talk, play, just like a 6-year-old. Heck, look at it this way. How lucky you are to get to live your childhood all over again. For someone like me, whose formative years weren't exactly la vie en rose, having a second childhood is a wonderful opportunity to get it right the second time around. That said, I understand how badly you want to converse intelligently about deep, important with a capital I subjects like politics, religion, and the arts. But be patient, that day will come. But for now, get rid of the hang-up of sounding like a 6-year-old. I hate to break it to you, but to much of the world, Americans already sound like 6-year-olds. Number one, build the wall. Need I say more? From my own experience, I found that the French will actually be impressed to hear you sounding like a 6-year-old because you'll be doing it in another language, their language. A French friend of mine who's been living in the States for years loves telling this joke. What do you call someone in America who speaks a second language? Answer, a tourist. Prove that snarky Frenchman wrong. Learn his language. If you do, you'll happily remind him that compared to other countries in Europe, Finland, for example, my background, the French are far less likely to speak a second language. Then sit back and gloat like a 6-year-old. So I hope some of those tips helped you. I know the une, la,
Une. Every single month, I get a question from Craig about invoices. And we do have suppliers for the restaurants. So we do have a lot of invoices to sort every single month. And he would ask me every single month, un ou une facture? And every single month I would say, une facture. Keep the smile on, it's fine.
But Craig, there are some hints like the E,
Yes.
like the E on the end of facture.
That's
Clues.
true.
There are
Exactly.
clues. You need to know the clues.
Yes.
Mhm.
Well, for the next version, you have to give me some of your tips.
Well,
You're right. Absolutely. No, it's
okay,
true.
but what you couldn't see was Julien's expressions as you were reading that passage
yes.
that were pretty funny as the French guy with the big smile on his face.
That should be a tableau, French guy with big smile.
Okay, and I would like to add one thing to that too, if you don't mind, and that is that I have the worst French accent ever. Okay, I mean, it is so pathetic. And I always apologize for it, but they always tell me, no, mais madame, c'est charmant. I mean, they love my horrible American accent.
Yes.
So at this point, I give up. Okay, I don't even care
You
about
just have to
speaking
accept it.
well. Screw it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny because I still have a strong accent, but they'll go, are you Canadian or German or something? You won't know like
Oh,
necessarily.
but your accent's so much better than mine.
But they still can tell within 5 words. That I'm
Well, of
not
course.
French.
One word. Bonjour.
The aura.
Right. Well,
It's
yeah,
the
especially
aura?
when I look at it, it's like,
Yeah, he is a very American aura in Paris.
Yeah.
He speaks perfect French, but I'm sorry to say that. You can picture the American coming in a French cafe speaking French.
Well,
which
for
is
one thing, it's
not-
because he's smiling.
Yeah.
He is great. He's himself, that's what's great about it.
No, but Julien, it also has to do with the expression in his face because Americans are smiling when they speak
True.
and the French are not.
Exactly.
Because French is all forward, woo, 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 instead of and so, no, it's true. It's true.
And, what I have to add to the list, though, honestly, when I do go back to the States and I think of what I miss in France, I do actually miss the language because it's really hard to find people to speak it with anywhere else. In France, you just have to. It's wonderful to just come back and go, oh, because there is a pleasure actually at a certain point because it just works a different part of your mind. It makes you see things just a little bit differently, and it's refreshing. So I encourage you all.
And there are some words that are way better in French than in English.
Absolutely.
I mean, some things that are just like work in French and don't work in English.
Exactly. Yes. Great. So now I'm going to move on to the next thing, which with Julien here as well, is talk a little bit about the restaurant, because I want to leave that part with the questions and answers, because I've talked about the restaurant a bit, and I know some of you have seen my past presentation for my first book. But very brief detail, I was studying at the University of Southern California, studying cinema, and sort of a long story, but my career did not take off like I had hoped it would. And I kind of reached a low point in my life. And then I got this lucky break where my friend, I called up a friend, I was feeling a little down. He said, it's funny you should call me. I just got I heard about a job. I just turned down a job in France working on a TV show. And I had already had my film degree, but they need someone to speak French. And next thing you know, I'm on a plane. I'm on the way to France. I worked for 3 years on this TV show, had a wonderful time. And at that moment, I had two aha moments. The first was knowing that it was a Sunday morning. I was living in the 7th arrondissement, and you could see just the tip of the Eiffel Tower peeking up over through the courtyard. And somebody was playing music on a piano in another apartment, and his window was open and it was echoing through the whole place. And the sky was blue, and I just said, "Oh my God, I don't want to grow old in LA." I don't know why I thought that. I was like, I need to live in Paris, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I went back to LA, and my friends took me to a breakfast place in downtown LA, and that's, I counted this a million times, but that's when I had this great aha moment. I ordered my favorite breakfast, ham, steak, and eggs, and buckwheat pancakes, and sourdough toast. And when it all came out, I said, "Oh my God, the one thing I missed in Paris." And that was my aha moment. And before you know it, the adventure started. And that's what the first book mainly is about. I wrote it because people kept asking so many questions about it. How did it start? What do you mean you had no restaurant experience? You're not a cook. Was it complicated? How about ingredients? Could you get the right ingredients? Are French customers different? They don't even eat breakfast, like we do. You might have a croissant or a pain au chocolat, but even that's not a daily thing, right?
No, that's a fancy day.
Fancy day. And so you'll have my French friends joke about, it's a café and a clope, which is a cafe and a cigarette. That's their breakfast in the morning, an espresso. And so all those things are talked about in this book. But what I will say, and again, we can wait for questions and answers. First, the challenges, of course. Everyone thinks, oh, the taxes and all this kind of thing. It's really not that. Adrian and I have talked about this. We're never going to become like super rich in France, just that you accept, right? It's just not going to happen. So it's the other things that are difficult. I think the most is the no flexibility in France. Every person I hire, whether a student or whatever, I have to put the exact amount of hours on a contract that they're going to work in a week. So say I have a student on there for 20 hours a week, and say somebody at 35 hours goes on vacation because you get 5 weeks paid vacation in France. They go on vacation for 2 weeks. You got to fill that spot. What are you going to do? So you want to raise everybody's hours up, and people want to work and fill in for that person. But by French law, you can only go 20% above the contract hours. Why? So 20 hours is 24 hours. Why? If they want to work 35, let them work. I can understand if you're trying to bring it down, but if they want to work up, it makes no sense. So that's just one example.
So why didn't Macron fix some of these dumb labor laws?
Oh my gosh, you have no idea, Adrian. This is not something you're gonna be taught. You cannot touch that.
I mean, it's been pretty much proven by statistics that the 35-hour week did not decrease unemployment.
Of course it didn't.
So but they will never change it. I've asked that question a million times, but if they know it's not working, why don't they change it? I mean, they don't have to go back to 40, but come up with something, make it more flexible.
Nobody wants to go back to working 40 for the same amount of money as 35. Let's face it.
Well, who said you have to work more for less?
No, but that's the thing, because in Iceland, they're
that's
playing with
right.
like you're working 4 days a week instead of 5, but at the same pay. In France, it didn't work that way. You were paid hourly, so your 40 hours, you are now only getting paid 35 hours. So people's pouvoir d'achat, right, went down. Their buying power went down, and that was one of the side effects. So you would think it would be more flexible if people want to work more, right? If they want to work more, they should have the option to.
But they don't want to work more because they don't have to.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, the truth is they still have a certain level of, they have a huge safety net, and they have security, right? And all those things, and they don't have to work more. So.
Well, I do have some of my employees actually willing to work more, but they just can't. They cannot.
That is just right.
The visa won't be renewed, for example.
But
you cannot work 35 hours per week.
And you
can't
the
second restaurant, so
but you can't have a second job either, right? That's
exactly.
illegal.
Yes.
But people do. They do.
Well,
they do with ways.
Au noir, under the table.
Yes. The next thing I would say, of course, is bureaucracy, but it's, bureaucracy, I hear American restaurateurs, complain about bureaucracy in the States and everything. But what's hard here is the inspectors that come in every week, it seems like, and they get to absurd levels. And one of them was like, I call them the language police. And they came in and they saw my menu and they said, the Swiss burger, you can't call it that in English, not in French. I said, why not? And they go, well, it's made with Emmental cheese, which is made in France, not made in Switzerland. So you can't call it that. And I'm like, but that's what we call in America. We call it a Swiss cheese burger. well, you're not in America, are you? So it's like, so those kinds of things come along one after the other. Most recently, which I don't want to get ahead of myself, but they allow you to have all the outside terraces and patios where you can take the parking space, much like New York and other places in the world. And we just got a visit the other week, and you know, it was sitting there beautifully working for 2 weeks. And it's like, oh, you got to get rid of it. And we had to pull it up because they would say, this is a rule that, you know, for example, you can't put one of them in loading zones. I turned around and there's like 3 loading zones that have fixed terraces on them. So that's the other problem too. It all depends on which bureaucrat you get. And if you're lucky to get one who's just like, oh yeah, you're fine. And it can be that extremes. No, you have to get rid of it. Julian had written the city and asked if it was okay to have it there. And the first time around, first confinement, and they were back going, well, we didn't, how do they say it? We didn't think about that.
Yeah, we didn't think about that. We don't have the answer.
So
That was it.
So this inspector controller, we call him, comes and says, well, I'll give you the answer now. No. So well, there you go. So, so I think that is one of the things, obviously, which we really feel, because we're a service industry, is the Gilets jaunes, you know, the weekly
Social gathering.
yeah, you know, the yellow vests, because it's every single week, and they tend to come very close to one of the other restaurant, and you can just see the numbers go down 50-60% sometimes just from that, right? From because they can get very aggressive.
Aggressive.
You like to, exactly. Right before the pandemic, we got hit with the strikes, you know, and that just went on forever. Transportation, we just felt that really bad, and so those were the, you know, if anyone has questions about those kinds of things, I can answer some of them later. But those kind of challenges, do you have any other that really gets you, the challenges of doing business here?
My challenge of doing business in France is actually have no things that gets me. You know, I'm trying to put things away, keep a safe distance with things, so I can stay sane in my mind. That's what I'm trying to do. That's my challenge, I would say.
No, but Craig, everyone who, I mean, it is generally known, okay,
Yeah.
that the French don't actually complain as much about taxation as they do about the heavy administration. That's their number one complaint overall, is that they're just buried in bureaucracy and paperwork.
Right, exactly. And so, you know, now we're gonna segue into the rewards, of course. I think so many people ask me, you know, how do I get a visa to be able to set up my own business in France? And even if I tell them, you know, it's a big challenge, people still want to do it. And I would agree that and encourage them to do it, because, as you know, Adrian, living here and working in France, it's just the quality of life is so great.
I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy, doing business in France.
Living in France, you mean?
Doing business in France.
Oh, doing business.
Doing business.
Doing business, yes.
Yeah.
But sometimes that's what you have to do to live in France, I guess. So,
Well,
I mean, I always say to people, if you can get a contract, do it. If you can work in France, do it right away.
Yeah. No. If you're working with a CDI contract, that is gold.
Yes. But people like me, and that's one of the reasons I got into the film business. I have sort of a creative background, and I don't like the 9-to-5 job. You know, I like being my own boss and doing my own thing. So, so just one case in point, I'm thinking about it as we're coming down here we're now in Antibes, right next to Nice, where Adrian and Patty are. And I'm thinking, look at this, where this beautiful high-speed train, and this isn't just one line like you're trying to do in California from LA to San Francisco. This crisscrosses all across the country. And you can just hop on, and in a couple hours you're in Lyon. You can spend the day or the weekend. You can see your family, which all families do. I think it brings families closer to each other, because they can, or, you know, visiting Belle-Maman, his mom. And of course, the 5 weeks paid vacation. When I came over the first time on a TV show, I thought, oh my God, you know, if you take more than 2 weeks off, even taking 2 weeks off, you're being lazy and irresponsible as a worker. You know, I really thought that. And then that got beat out of me very quickly here. And I think everyone should have 5 weeks. And if I were opening a business in America, I would hope they would force me to do that, because I'm not sure I would do it on my own. But if they forced me, I'd say, great, do it, you know, because 5 weeks vacation, everyone should have. So that those kinds of things.
Definitely, I would do it too. I think it's necessary, just you know,
Right.
so you can get your experience as a human being and involved and all that. You need to have your own time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's necessary.
And so then moving to the next best reward, of course, is the French lifestyle. You know, the quality of life, where a sit-down dinner from my family was once a year at Thanksgiving. You know what I mean? All the rest of the time was either fast and rushed or microwaved or, you know, a TV dinner or something. It was here. When I first came over, I couldn't believe, like, wow, these different courses, and it's just a regular day or a regular night or a regular weekend, you know. And any excuse to get together and have these wonderful meals is the perfect segue to our second special guest. Hola.
Here she is.
So this is Julien's mom. If you've heard of her, if you read the books, you'll know about Belle Maman. And
Oh,
she's
she's
going to
getting her wine.
she's going to she's going to show
Oh,
you
no,
something.
she's getting her frog's legs.
So here she is. This is one of the meals she's going to be cooking for us, which is frog legs, which incidentally is harder and harder to find in restaurants. Have you find that, Adrian?
Yes. In fact, there's a restaurant across the street from me here in Nice. It's one of the very few that makes them.
Yes, exactly. So, now, which I say, the next chapter I'm going to read a quick excerpt from involves Belle Maman, because in France, you know, America, we call mothers-in-law, you know, which isn't a very charming appellation for your mother, right? It's like it's as if you, by law, you have to be, you know, connected. Here we call it Belle Maman, you know, beautiful mom, beautiful mama.
And she is. And she
yes.
is.
And I'm her favorite in-law, son-in-law. So that's a good thing. She would say, right? Correct.
C'est son genre préféré.
So we're down here for 4 days visiting her on that high-speed train, and she already has the menu on the refrigerator of what we're going to have each day we're together. And I thought that'd be the perfect opportunity to read this excerpt from this one chapter, and you'll get a real flair for how lucky I am. And this is in Let Them Eat Pancakes. And the title of the chapter is Operation Escargot. Okay. And then I explained how Julie and I first met and how our relationship evolved and how I first met his mom. And so I'm going to jump well into the chapter and start with this. By the time Julie and I had moved in together, my belle maman was already spoiling me rotten with her delicious culinary creations. Every month or so, she would take the TGV, the high-speed train I took today, up from Dijon to visit Julie and me in Paris. On her first visit, we went to meet her at the Gare de Lyon train station. After giving each other the customary bees on each cheek, I tried to lift up Elizabeth's king-size suitcase, only to keel over, almost getting a hernia. Oh la la, belle maman, what's in here? It weighs a ton. That's exactly what the nice man on the train said when he was helping me get my valise up onto the overhead rack. What's that in there, madame? A chopped up body? The man, there's a famous French movie actually about that. So
True.
Okay. The man wasn't that far off the mark. Once we got back to our apartment, Elizabeth unloaded the contents of her valise. Like Mary Poppins and her magic bag, she reached inside and pulled out stacks upon stacks of cookware. Le creuset.
Le creuset.
Ouais. Cocotte.
La cocotte, oui, en fonte.
Braising skillets. Les moules de serre, dessert molds, and metal escargot trays, replete with ghastly desnailing tools. All of which was a not too subtle way of pointing out that Julie and I did not have the necessary equipment to match Elizabeth's culinary skills. But that wasn't all. Elizabeth had already prepared most of the meals for the weekend ahead of time, sealing them up in her pots and pans for the 1.5-hour trip from Dijon. After making sure that nothing had spilled out, Elizabeth dug into her purse, pulled out a decorative piece of parchment paper, and began reading the note she had written on it. Voici le menu. On Saturday, the starter will be a scallop tartare with a white wine coulis, followed by the main course, parmentier de canard, topped with Conti cheese au gratin. Sunday's menu will include foie gras on mini toasts with a gelée de
Gewürztraminer.
Oui.
which is a white wine.
Vin blanc d'Alsace.
Yeah, an Alsatian white wine as the starter. Bœuf bourguignon with my secret ingredient, bien sûr, for the main course, followed by a selection of seasonal fromage. And if you still have room, Elizabeth smiled at me, dessert. Dessert. A recipe I've been waiting to try out for some time now. Miroir au cassis, a black currant flan. Mon Dieu. And to think Elizabeth hadn't even gotten to the wine list yet. The only thing better than Belle Maman carting her delicious creations to Paris was the rare occasion when Julie and I were able to get away from work and visit her in Dijon. One Sunday afternoon, Julie and I spent 4 lovely hours seated at Elizabeth's dining room table, which was perfectly laid out with her father's gold-laced china, linen napkins, and heavy-in-the-hand silverware. After enjoying a scrumptious 5-course meal, the 3 of us desperately needed to move, lest we fall into an uncoverable food coma. "Shall we go out for a walk?" I said, as I held my hand atop my plump belly, not sure where gourmand ended and glutton began. Although summer had officially started 2 weeks earlier, it was still unseasonably chilly. A light drizzle soaked through the trees as we strolled through the wooded area not far from Elizabeth's place. Thanks to the fresh air and exercise, it wasn't long before we started building up an appetite again, or at least I did. Just when I was about to ask Elizabeth what was on the dinner menu, something caught her eye, and she made a beeline to the base of a large oak tree. "Oh, comme il est beau," Elizabeth said as she crouched down and picked up an escargot, a burgundy escargot to be exact, aka the snail that's used by the French to make their most famous delicacy. Elizabeth held up the snail and turned to Julian. "What's the date today?" Julian looked at his watch. "July 5th. Parfait. Stay here. I'll be right back." Elizabeth set the snail back on the ground and rushed back to her place. "What was that all about?" I asked. Elizabeth wanted to make sure hunting season has already started. "Has it?" "Yep, 4 days ago." Sure enough, France actually has a hunting season for snails. According to the Arrêté de 24 avril, blah, 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 escargot hunting season begins on July 1st and ends on March 31st, with one stipulation. The captured snail must be at least 3 centimeters or 1.18 inches in size. After a few minutes, Elizabeth returned holding a large plastic shopping bag. She gently picked up the snail from before and placed it into the bag. Then she looked around the woods, her eyes lighting up. For the first time I noticed there were snails everywhere, as if appearing out of thin air. "Where did they all come from?" I asked. "Who knows?" Julian shrugged, but apparently the weather conditions are just right for them to, how do you say in English?
S'accoupler.
S'accoupler. Thank God for Google Translate. A few taps into the keyboard of my phone and voila, I learned a new French word, s'accoupler, or to mate. "You mean to tell me your mom, Elizabeth, is hunting down a bunch of horny snails?" "Yep," Julian smiled. "Horny snails who just laid their eggs and are ready to faire l'amour all over again." Well, at least they're going down happy," I said. I then turned and watched Elizabeth, youthful and fit, as she crouched down from one tree to the next. In less than an hour, she had gathered more than 250 snails. "Bon, that should do it," she said, her shopping bag bursting at the seams. "Impressive," I said. "Is there a limit to how many escargots you can catch in one day?" That's one of those gray areas in France," Julian said. "As long as they're for personal consumption and not for sale, there shouldn't be a problem. But what if an inspector comes along and asks why you have so many?" Elizabeth pondered the question for a moment, then looked at me and said, "Well, I'll just tell him we have a big family." So now this is the last part of this, because this I've never seen before. "I've always wondered how so-called delicacies got their start. For example, who was the first person in Cambodia to say, 'Hey, I got an idea, let's fry up some tarantulas for dinner'? The same goes for ants, grasshoppers, frog legs, etc., etc. For me, these delicacies have one thing in common. They're also disgusting. The first humans to even consider eating them must have been either desperate, starving, or both." My hunch appeared to be correct when I heard the gruesome process Elizabeth went through to prepare le délice, known as escargot. And here I thought making foie gras was horrendous. It reminded me of the first time I saw my grandma Lizzie prepare the trout my dad had just caught in the nearby river. With the fish still alive, my Gram grabbed a big, scary knife. Then with one quick flick, gutted the sucker, blood and intestines spattering all over the place. "How do you want it cooked, Eddie?" she asked my father. "Broiled or fried?" I stared wide-eyed at my sweet, doting grandmother as she held the dead fish in one hand and the killer knife in the other, blood dripping off her face and apron. Recalling that memory, I didn't have the heart nor stomach to watch my elegant belle-maman physically transform something so hideous as a snail into something so delicious as an escargot. Instead, I asked her to describe for me each step, which I'll share here. Step 1, place the snails in a box or jar that's punctured with little holes so air can get in, but the snails can't get out. Let sit for 8 days until the snail's digestive tracts are completely empty of food and poop. Hold on a sec, I said. Are you saying you starved them to death? Yes, Elizabeth said, except for one petit detail. Oh no, don't tell me. They're still alive? Eh oui. Step 2, take the snails out of the box or jar and rinse them with tap water. Place them in a new container filled with gros sel or coarse salt. Add 2 teaspoons of vinegar per 48 snails and let sit for 2 hours, causing them to drool. Are they dead yet? How is that possible? Because the petits little guys are tough cookies. Step 3, rinse the snails with running water a second time in order to get rid of any excess drool. FYI, sticky drool is not good for snail meat. Who knew? Okay, they've got to be dead by now, right? Nope, they're very much alive. But it's been like 8 days of nonstop torture. Eh bien, Elizabeth gave me one of those Gaelic shrugs I've come to know so well. Step 4, boil the snails for 10 minutes using a corkscrew. Remove the snails from the shells, making sure to separate the intestines from muscles. Okay, please tell me it's over, that the little guys have been put out of their misery. Ah oui, les escargots are definitely deceased now. Thank God, I couldn't bear to hear one more grisly detail. Elizabeth smiled as she put the prettiest snail shells aside to be used later on.
Okay, wait a minute. How do you use a corkscrew to get the snail out of the shell?
Comment tu fais
Comment
pour,
tu utilises? Vas-y.
ouais, tire-bouchon, comme tu utilises ça pour enlever le...
Avec un petit piquet, et puis j'enlève juste les. Voilà, je tire simplement, tranquillement.
We should do a video of this.
Yeah, I should do a video of this. She just uses the little sticky pointed part to just kind of get in there and
Oh, because it's curved, you
Yes.
can kind of like that.
Oui.
Oh, and we all need to know this.
You do. You want to be French, you got to know this. It's part of the passport requirements. Okay. Step 5, rinse the snail meat one last time before boiling them on low heat for 3 hours in a cool bouillon,
Ah, oui.
vegetable-based broth, consisting of thyme, bay leaf, carrots, onions, shallots, garlic, white wine, salt, and pepper. Sounds yummy, I said voraciously, managing to shock myself with how quickly my paleo brain had forgotten the horror the poor snails had been put through. Step number 6, remove from heat and let cool down. You are now ready to A, stuff the prettiest shells with snail meat and garlic butter, bake and eat. B, freeze the snails in Ziploc bags for all eternity, or at least until the zombie apocalypse arrives. C, preserve the snails in jars of 48 each, 240 total, so they can be transported to, say, I don't know, California? With my belle maman having successfully transmuted the mushy mullets into a fancy French delicacy, it was now on to our next mission, smuggling those 240 snails past US Customs, or as Julian and I lovingly called it,
Opération Escargot.
Operation Escargot. So you can read what happens as we tried to smuggle in 240 snails into America.
Okay, so who figured out how to do all that? Okay, I mean, at
Well, she
what
learned from her
point-
dad. She learned
No,
from her
no,
dad.
no. I understand that, but I mean, how many years have the French been eating escargot? And then who figured out how to prepare them?
Non, je ne sais pas.
She doesn't know how long or qui avait l'idée non plus.
Non.
Nobody knows.
Okay, so it's a research project. We have to figure out who's actually the inventor of the French escargot.
Yes, yes. Exactly.
Génération.
But they are yummy.
Oh, they are excellent. And of course, as my niece, I don't know if my niece is watching, but my great niece and great nephew discovered, it was all about the garlic butter. You know, they kind of like put the snails aside and said, can we have more? And what they meant was the garlic butter because they sopped it all up with the bread.
Right, with the parsley in it and the.
Yes. And so, yeah, so now I'm going to bring it back to the rewards. This is part of the rewards of having a business and living in France, where this feels like, you know, I feel like I have 2 homes, one in France and one in America. And I can imagine like having 2 parents, one French, one American. I can't imagine not having one without the other. You could say it completes me if you like.
Okay, so Craig, when are you going to do pancakes with escargot?
Oh no, I don't know. I don't think you want to go that far.
Ah, oui.
Les escargots, c'est des
No,
pancakes.
no, c'est une bonne idée.
But she has made a loaf, a escargot loaf, the cake. the cake au escargot.
Cake aux escargots.
Ah
tu as
oui,
fait la dernière fois,
cake
c'était
aux-
bon.
oui,
She made like an
aux
escargot
escargots,
cake.
j'ai fait.
That's kind of like a pancake.
Right.
Tarte aux escargots.
And a tarte aux escargots. She's also did a
escargots.
tarte with escargot
Oui,
as well.
voilà.
So
Mhm.
Look, in New Orleans, they put oysters in everything.
Yes.
Okay. They stuffed turkeys that, you know, they're grilled, they're fried, they're whatever. And you could do the same thing with escargot. You could stuff a turkey with escargot.
absolutely, absolutely.
Oui, oui, oui. Ah oui.
So now we're going to get back to some of the greatest awards, and this is, as Adrian pointed out, this is a bit of a scoop. I know some of you have been following us on Facebook and everything. So I'd like to say, please follow me on Craig Carlson, either author. I have two different ones: author, professional one, and my personal one. And for example, you can see the video that we did of you saw, Adrian, of Belmont preparing escargot.
Mhm.
We did it as a live video, and then now it's on the site. So
Facebook
on
page.
Facebook page. So please check out those. Please sign up. Please like the page.
Okay, wait, put your site, Patty, can you type in the web address into the
And then the
chat?
restaurant one too, if you want to do the breakfast hyphen in America. But we want to give you a little bit of a scoop. Some of you know, I hinted at it. I wasn't allowed to have a non-disclosure agreement, but now that it's kind of out there, I can share it with everyone.
Is it?
Yes. So Julian, can you make it the share screen?
Sure, I can share
And
the
we
screen
we
for
also
you.
have Julian as technical assistant,
Alrighty. Yes.
and put a full. So I can now safely say, because people have posted these kinds of pictures all over the internet, that an episode of Emily in Paris was shot at the diner. This is huge for us because and I can't divulge any more information, but it's actually part of the story, and BIA is now considered part of a landmark you would see in Paris. You know, the opera, she goes to the opera, she goes to, where else, everywhere, Eiffel Tower, this kind of thing, and to breakfast in America. That's all I can say right now. It should be showing in the fall, but this was so exciting. This is the location in the second restaurant in the Marais.
There was
And
a
as-
crew of 100 people.
Well, 100 including 50 extras and all that. So they weren't very discreet. So it got out pretty quickly what was going on. And earlier that day, they came in to dress up the diner a little bit. If any of you have been in here, we don't have a Coca-Cola sign or a Core sign or pinup girls, but they put those in the diner just to give it a little bit of extra fun.
Did they leave them for you?
No. They did. I'm glad you brought that up though, because they did. Do you see here the bar counter?
Yeah.
Looks like tile. That's Hollywood at work. Those aren't real tiles. Those are dressing. They did that for us and kept it for us. And
Really?
it was dark wood that was all stained and kind of not pretty. Actually, you have to trust us on this. This is so much cleaner and prettier. So they let us keep this. And if you discerning eyes can see, if you look up to the upper left or to the kind of upper right, you can see a yellow and red thing, and that is my books. They allowed me to put in the Breakfast in America mugs,
Little bum boy.
a little big boy bun boy.
Like the big
had to
boy,
sign
the
release
big boy
for it.
wasn't there, right? The big boy they brought in?
I actually brought in some of the stuff from BIA1, which is funny
Oh.
because I thought they should have shot there, and you'll see in the next picture, because BA1 is so much bigger surface-wise. The B2 is divided into 3 separate rooms, so
Right.
it's much more a challenge to shoot in there. But the producers had their hearts set on the second one. I think it has something to do with it being in the Marais, and it has something to do with the story in the Marais. But it was so wonderful and generous and gracious of them to let me have my books in the background. I signed a little thing, release for that, and to have our logos and keep our name on it and everything. But as you can see here, the place is very small, and they had to remove the bathroom door just to get the camera in. That's how small it was. And so here you can see the camera in the bathroom where they're shooting the scene. And they let us, they paid us for the food, and they made it look for the extras outside and at the tables as if they're halfway through their meal. So that's why, we had, our cook was there, and he made up the dishes, and then you were there working with him.
And so this is the food stylist, so the food designer, and he's supposed to transform the food into something that is half eaten.
Yeah,
that's what he did.
And this is my favorite part of
Hollywood.
the whole thing. On the right-hand side is Denise. She's our server extraordinaire, and she's been lighting our lives up for so long now. And she heard the location scout was coming out, And if any of you have been to the restaurant, she always dresses, she's a fashion person, she's an image
Consider.
conseiller,
Conseiller.
yeah, like consultant of image and all that. So she always comes in dressed beautifully, but when she heard the location scout was coming, she dressed up a little even more beautifully. And when location scout saw her, she's like, oh my God, she's magnificent. Do you think she'd be willing to be the waitress in the episode? And she's like, well, yes, sure. And so she got cast. They made the uniforms for her and another extra. And our Denise now is going to be a star. So I hope she remembers us. But she's in the scene. And next photo.
I think that's the last one.
No, there's two. There's
Let me see.
one more.
Let me just see.
Do the last three,
The
four,
last
three.
three. So I'm just gonna open that here. Just 1 second. And share with everyone. Here you go.
This is definitely a scoop, you guys.
That's what I was thinking. All right, so you can
Do it individually then.
So you can still talk about what you want to talk now
Go ahead.
while I do this.
We have to do the shot very quickly because I'm not sure they will get me in trouble for this. But somebody took this picture, so I suppose since they shared it themselves, we can
Oh,
share it.
yeah. There's
Right.
Emily.
Okay, and next one, someone took this, but we're going to keep that up very quickly, Julian, this next one.
Very quickly. Okay.
Voila, in the diner.
Hold on a second. I'm not sharing it yet. Let me just share it for a couple of seconds. Are you guys ready? This is it. And stop sharing.
And we have one last, okay, before I go to the end. I love, my whole life is always, and this is how I'll conclude, my life has always come full circle, and it's always amazed me how life works. You know, for example, when I went to Paris the first time and fell in love with cinema, that ended up, my career didn't take off as I thought it would in America, but it allowed me to come over to France, allowed me to have this restaurant. And when we were back in the States, Julian and I, back in May, April and May, I started going through boxes of old photos and old letters and that kind of thing. And I stumbled upon something that I thought was lost forever. And I thought I'd share that right now. And I couldn't believe it when it popped up. I mean, when it came, but there I am. Full screen, Julian. 1984, after I climbed up the Eiffel Tower, and there is Cheryl Ladd. And the name of the movie was Romance on the Orient Express. And it gets better. I know I can share this because she ended up sharing it on her site. And she wrote this, nice memories all around. And so I think this sums up my life here in Paris. And I thought it couldn't be more apropos. And boy, before you know it, it was shared by hundreds, if not thousands of people. So there's how
You
life comes
haven't
full
changed
circle.
one bit either.
Really?
I mean, except for the beard.
Okay. Well, I guess that's good to know. And I'm so glad that happened then, because they never let you get near a star now. So anyway, so that's my presentation. So I hope you enjoyed it. I covered every bit of my life, from my love of France, my love of life here, and
Your French experience
and doing a business in France. So I'm happy to open this up to conversation. Love to hear what you all have to say. If you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Craig and Julian and Elizabeth. And so now, yeah, let's hear from you guys. Patty, do you see any questions in the chat that we should address first? Patty's in charge.
And Ben Maman's coming back, so if you have a question for her, we can translate.
I don't know, we didn't really have questions, except somebody couldn't hear Julian.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Someone just had a question about the working hours in France. Aren't there some professions in which people do work more than 35 hours per week?
Julian?
That's a
Do you
question
know
for
the answer to that?
working HR. That's me. So basically, you are not supposed to work more than 35 hours per week, but you can work extra hours, which is actually hours after 35 hours per week.
Overtime.
Overtime. So of course you can actually sign a contract with a company for more than 35 hours per week. So usually it's up to 44, but you are absolutely not supposed to work more than 44 hours per week. Now, I'm
But
sure that
you get paid, right, as overtime. You get paid.
you get paid as overtime.
But you're
yes.
also when Hollande came, Sarkozy had taken away the tax for overtime hours, so people were getting a nice chunk of that money overtime taking home with them. That's one of the first things Hollande did. The president got rid of that, and suddenly my workers and a lot of other workers in restaurants, because restaurants has a special deal where they can do up to 39. That's part of overtime, that you're not in the same category as other jobs, because they said we can't survive if you just have us doing 35 hours. The restaurant business is, requires much more. So he got rid of that tax benefit that had been there, and that caused a lot of people to get upset, which I don't blame them, because they were getting.
I do remember myself, I was working on a different company, not with you, Craig, at the time, and from 1 month to another, I lost 100 euros on my pay. So I had to ask my boss, what happened? And he said to me, well, that's Hollande. So you're paying more taxes now in these extra hours, so you're getting less.
Yeah.
And he was a socialist.
I've heard, and I've never been able to have it work for me, that there are certain management positions and things like that where they just kind of put in there what the job needs, however hours needed. Does that even exist? I've heard that, but I have never seen it.
A job position?
Like a management position or something on higher level where you can get a contract that basically says you're free to work what you need to work. No, like a salary-based.
A salary-based one.
Yeah, like a salary-based, not an hour-based salary.
There is, but is there any people to sign that kind of contract? That's another question.
Well, I don't know. But yeah, so I forgot.
It's rare. It's actually rare. It's rare. People love to have contracts here. It's just like being in a box, and you know the limit of the box. It feels so comfortable to be in a box.
Stop it. He's more critical than I am.
I can't. This is my country. I can say whatever I want about my country. Okay? So ask me questions. I will answer.
Craig, we've got a question of what was the year that all this began? When did the BIA dream become a reality?
Yeah, so the first, I worked on Robin until 1999. I had the idea in 2000 and started putting a business plan together. I had never had my own business. I never had a restaurant, and I certainly didn't have it in a foreign country. So I quickly realized I had to raise some money. 9/11 happened during all that. And so it took almost 2 years from the idea to actually having the money raised to getting over here in 2002 to get the location down payment and then all the renovations and the crazy story about that, which is in the book. 2003, we opened in January of 2003 for the first restaurant. So it'll be 19 years in January. And then 3 years later, we opened the second restaurant in the Marais that you saw the pictures of, only one side. And then 3 years after that, we've got the other side of the restaurant to expand our seating, which also included an upstairs. So it tripled the amount of seating. And so that was 2010. It's like 4 years later, right?
2010.
Yeah. And so we've been going since then.
And then there's another question. Somebody has a question for Elizabeth.
Yay!
Some of her favorite dishes to prepare.
I'm sorry, say it again.
What are some of Elizabeth's favorite dishes to prepare?
Alors, quel est un de tes plats préférés que tu aimes faire?
Oh là. Ah.
Difficile.
Oui, difficile parce qu'il y en a plusieurs.
C'est pas grave, tu peux
Deux
dire.
ou trois.
Mais je dirais que de toute façon, c'est toute préparation de viande en sauce, bœuf bourguignon, coq au vin, coq
Au vin jaune.
donc au vin jaune et au
Poulet Gaston Gérard.
Poulet Gaston Gérard, blanquette de veau,
So-
navarin d'agneau. Voilà, c'est plutôt ces plats-là.
Oh, so they're the classic bistro dishes.
She likes the meat dishes in a sauce, prepared in a sauce, because you know the French, it's all about the sauce,
Voilà.
right? C'est tout est autour de la sauce.
Voilà, tout ce plat de viande qui est mijoté longtemps, préparé, voilà,
Yeah.
pour faire revenir, voilà.
And my mom's version was the crock pot. You know, just throw in the meat in the thing, go off for the day, and come back and it's done. But she actually sits there. She sits there for hours and actually.
Which actually makes a whole difference.
Can they put on their on mute so they can ask themselves, or is that?
Yes,
sure, sure.
we'd love for you to do that. Unmute and ask your questions yourself.
Yeah, because this is my favorite part, because I love hearing what y'all have to say and what you want to know, and I live for the Q&A. So no
And
pressure.
don't cry, just go for it, folks.
Hey, Craig, it's Jim Lesser.
Hey, Jim.
Hi, Jim.
Hi, Jim.
Adrian, how are you?
We're all good.
I had a question. Are you doing any more videos? Maybe that was answered already. I lost my connection for a while.
Who
We'd
are you
love
asking
to,
that
and,
of?
Ah, la belle maman.
Ah,
Yes.
Bien sûr.
Adrian and another friend of mine who works in the film business said I have to get the equipment for my next one to have the microphone better, because we were just using his phone and running around, and even though we like the scrappy nature of them, you know, the kind of spontaneous nature of it, was a struggle sometimes to hear everyone. So I need to invest in a few microphones. wireless.
Greg, you'll be
Yes.
happy to know that I happen to possess a really good microphone system, thanks to HGTV, that you are welcome to borrow.
Yay, cool.
Ah.
And it's next to a phone though? Yeah, the sound can go to the phone?
Yeah, I have the good stuff.
You don't have to have a camera or any of that.
No.
All right, so the answer to Jib is yes.
Yes, exactly.
I'm glad I asked.
Yeah, me
Yes,
too.
thank you, Jim. That was very
I think we
good.
have 3 of them that are up, right? We have 3 of them that are up, so you can check them out on our
And
Facebook.
Jim, see you in September. Actually, Jim is happening to go to France in September, and we already booked a date, right? We're going to go to
Oui.
Train Bleu for lunch, correct? Or dinner?
Oui.
I can't remember.
Probably depends on your schedule.
Is it lunch or dinner? I thought it was dinner.
Well, we have to see about your schedule.
We'll see. We'll talk
Okay.
about that. But definitely, we have the place and we have the date too. So looking forward to it.
If you all know, the Train Bleu is in the Gare de Lyon.
Une
C'est-
référence.
Ouais.
Excellent.
It has reopened?
Non, bravo. Ah oui.
It's
It's
Belle Maman
reopened?
Brew.
Oui,
Yeah.
oui, oui.
Yeah.
Belle cuisine gastronomique, vraiment très bon.
So
Très bien.
thumbs up from Belle Maman.
Mm.
And it's the atmosphere is beautiful,
Yeah.
Oh my
J'aime
gosh,
beaucoup,
yeah.
really
j'aime beaucoup.
beautiful. Yeah.
Eh oui.
Elisabeth, vous serez là aussi, peut-être? Vous pouvez nous joindre?
Oui, ben oui, j'espère, oui.
Ah, d'accord, c'est bien.
Ouais.
Keep our fingers crossed.
Oui.
Oui.
Jim's French is good.
Yeah.
Ah, merci bien.
So I had a question.
Patty!
Ah,
Patty!
So my question was, I love it when I hear a French person speak English with a French accent. I think it's, j'adore. But so how can we convince the French that it's wonderful to hear an English person speak French with an English accent?
Well, it is, no?
Yeah, yeah. Adrian can attest, right? They
English,
love American
English
accents.
or American?
No, when when an English person speaks French,
But
how can we convince the French that that's a beautiful thing for
Okay,
the accent?
So,
But not American.
yeah, but English or American?
When an English person speaks French.
English person, because
English
I was told recently by a taxi driver who I had a wonderful ride with. I mean, like one of the nicest rides ever, that he really prefers the American accent over the English accent. Because what he said was that Americans sing and the British do not. So he just he said, forget the Brits. He's happy with the Americans.
Well, I think the British are determined not to have any accent at all. Je suis très content. That's how the British, because the British need to keep that English essence. The Americans at least try, I think, to to bring a Frenchness to
You
them.
could easily be right about that because it does
I
sound
didn't
that
know
way.
that. I didn't think about that. Yeah, it's very interesting.
I actually noticed the difference, and I do agree with that taxi driver too. I mean, it is such a pleasure to hear you guys trying to speak French and all that. I mean, I love the accent. I love the mistakes you do. These are not mistakes. These are jewels that you should keep as long as possible.
You mean
Maybe
all
that-
of those?
all the time, man.
I have to jump in here because I'm English and not American, even though I'm living in the US. So it's sort
What
of
are your thoughts?
it's a French-American English accent, a mixture. Je suis anglais.
Ah,
Oh, cool. And what do you think about the subject? Do you think that's true, or French people generally?
I don't know. I don't know. People are usually fine with my accent.
I think the French and the English take every opportunity to play games with each other.
Actually, living here, I get a lot of people who say, "Oh, I love your accent."
Yeah. Oh, it is lovely.
I think it's Downton Abbey and all that stuff.
Yeah.
oh, that
I
could be.
get the same thing too from French people. They say, "Oh, I love your accent. Where are you from?" I'm from Burgundy.
I love an Italian accent. I love it when the Italians speak French.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's definitely something.
Hey,
Can I jump in,
can
Karen?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, I get to start. This
We
is
have
Susan. And as I said at the beginning, you know, I lived in Paris before you opened your place. And so as an American, when I wanted some American food, some pancakes, I go to Café Parisien.
Yes.
I think that's
They're still there. They're still there, yeah.
So it makes me wonder, are your clientels mostly French, or are there lots of expats craving American meat food?
Yeah, in the beginning, it was 70% expats, tourists who found out, word of mouth, that kind of thing, and 30% French. But over the years, it's switched and completely flipped around. It's like 70% French now. And the thing I'm most proud of is about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe a little bit more, there were a lot of American type diner, what do you call them, copycats showing up, but they didn't get the breakfast part. that you could have it at any time. You can have your unlimited mug of coffee and all that. And so we did consciously aimed our marketing on that. And it took a while, a long time to convince our French customers that they could have pancakes at any time they wanted, the whole breakfast anytime they wanted. And I have a funny story in one of the books about that, where the act of getting breakfast at nighttime was almost like being a rebel, a revolutionary.
God forbid you don't follow the rules.
Can I jump in? I want to say hi. Hi, Craig, honey. It's Lauren. Hi, Julianne. Hi, guys. Hi, Bill, Mama. I wanted to ask a question, Craig, because you always had such great stories that you would regale us with, about the restaurant. And I've known you for many, many, many moons right now.
Lauren's one of those investors in the restaurant who helped me out get started. So believer in the dream.
Okay, there you go. There you go. Believed in the dream. Can you tell us one example of kind of a crazy thing that you might have experienced over the years at the restaurant? May it be a strange person or a strange circumstance or something kind of bizarre that has happened over the years that just kind of sticks in your head?
I would think the anarchist. We had a customer who kind of a self-proclaimed antagonist. And at the end, he refused to pay for his meal, saying it was his right, and I ended up chasing him as he left the place several blocks until he reached his apartment.
It was his right to eat free?
Yes. His right not to pay, not to eat for free.
His right not to pay.
That's very different. And so I chased him and yelling after him and got to his apartment, got into a big yelling fight. And it's actually in the book, actually. And this never happens, but a cop actually showed up. There's never a cop when you need one. And this actually showed up, and he just looked at him and said, "What's the deal?" And I said, "This guy's trying to dine and dash," which I didn't know how to say in French. and he's like, "Well, do you live here? Go up, get your wallet, and pay the guy." So the cop made him pay me. And so to this day, I'm a little bit skittish that way when I see a customer kind of just get up and go, and I'm like, did they pay? Did they pay? I'm ready to put on my running shoes and go after them. But I was pretty traumatized by that. So I think that's the ones. Do you have any, Julian? Any funny stories? Oh, tell me about the Vermont people. That's just, this is a French, this is not in the book, and this is a French thing that I would not have thought about.
This is such a funny thing, but I'm glad I heard some stories about that. I wasn't sure it was true until that day. And so it was 3 customers sitting in a booth, and one of them came to me at the bar and said, can I ask you something? Sure. I mean, can we order an apple pie, and can you put that on top and just put it in the microwave for us? And he handed me a plastic wrapped piece of cheddar cheese.
Velveeta.
Oh.
And so I realized, oh, so that's true. That's what they do. Okay, that's for real.
Yeah, they brought their
So
own
I did it.
Velveeta and put it on the apple pie and had them heat it up. with the
Where did
Velveeta.
they do that?
At the second BIA, right?
Until it made some.
They were the
pop.
nicest people in the world, and we do this apple pie coffee special between 4 and 7, like a happy hour.
Yeah, but where do they traditionally do that? In Alsace? Is that what you said?
They're from Vermont.
Oh, Vermont.
Yeah, I don't think there's Velveeta in Alsace.
No, I don't think so. But oh God, okay.
There might be. Nowadays, there might be. It's just like there's so much American stuff here now.
Linda Lawyers
Velveeta.
with her hand up. So Linda, can you can unmute and ask your question?
Bonjour, je viens de Chicago.
Oh.
Je m'appelle Linda.
Okay.
En
Bonjour,
parlant des accents, je me souviens une fois qu'une Française m'avait dit, je voudrais épouser votre accent.
Oh.
Et j'adorais cette phrase. Épouser votre accent.
Can you share that with everyone that doesn't speak French, what they said to you? Can you share it in English?
Oh, a French woman said to me once that she would like to marry my accent. Have you heard of that expression before?
Épouser.
Épouser.
No,
I
I've
like
heard-
that.
Épouser, marry my accent.
You said that to something that you like so much that you want that thing to be part of yourself. Usually that's what you said.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. And if Sue
You like
Bird-
something so much that you want to be part of it, so you want to marry it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that why you married me, Julian?
Let's see.
Okay, anyway, next question. Thank you for that. That was lovely. Sue?
Okay, Sue.
I thank you. And I wanted to comment, by the way, Linda, I am also from Chicago, but I currently live in the Detroit area. And I have a question about that too, kind of off the subject, but maybe you'll let me, anyway, about the accent. I have been told by more than one French person that I have a cute accent, which to me, c'est pas compliment. Je voudrais être un accent français. I'd much rather have a French accent than a cute accent. But I guess that's impossible. And I've also had the experience where I'll walk into a little boutique, usually in the 4th or 5th, very touristy. I haven't said anything yet in any language, and they start talking to me in English. I don't want to speak English. I want to speak French. So do I have a sign on my face that says I'm not French?
Yes, you do. I'm sorry, I'm going to jump in on this one, and it's because Susan, what you don't realize is that English is spoken by, everything is back, your face is smiling all the time, and some of that has to do with the way we speak English. And the French are very complete opposite of that, because French is spoken forward. So I can tell an American from a French person just by looking at the lines in their faces. It's immediate. So you can't get away with it. You see, you look at that face. I mean, come on, everybody looks, you're smiling all the time. Okay.
Help it. I can't help it. It's part of me.
Exactly. C'est trop évident.
Can I ask a question? This is sort of off the subject, but I just experienced a 47-hour power outage. And I'm telling people that no place that I've lived in 4 major metropolitan areas, I've never experienced the amount of power outages that there are in Southeast Michigan. And people ask me about, what about the time you spend in France? Have you ever experienced it? The longest stretch I've ever had was 2.5 months. I don't remember ever having a power outage, but are there power outages in France?
No.
I've never had
Never seen
one,
The
What?
what?
not even for a few minutes.
You've
What?
never had it, right? Yeah.
I have experienced it when there was a strike with the electrical company and the.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
That was on purpose.
That's something.
J'ai besoin de déménager.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Listen, I just sent my passport away for renewal. I may not have it until November. That's how long it's taking for them to process. passport.
Wow. Wow. Well, it took me 2 years to get my French passport. Well, it took me many years, but 2 years once we started the actual process. But once the process was done, it was like 10 days to get the physical passport.
Yeah, but that's not just renewing your passport as a citizen, that's getting your citizenship. So that's different.
Yeah, but I was surprised how fast they got the passport ready. You know, once the file
Right.
was done, boom, 10 days
No,
later I had it.
I mean, I think what Americans need to understand is that France has an amazing infrastructure. All that tax money goes to creating a really solid infrastructure, and which the US does not have, and that's because so much is privatized.
And I think also, I've mentioned this to people, and please tell me if you agree, the buildings that I've lived in when I'm in Paris and even in Nice are like 17th, 18th, 19th century buildings, and they're much more solid than the modern construction we have in the US.
Oh, yeah.
Unless you want to talk about plumbing. That is a weakness in France, is plumbing.
Well, yeah, but Craig, the buildings move, okay, like
Yeah.
my building's 17th century, so it's always moving. And therefore the plumbing actually gets loosened up, you know, like you can do nothing and suddenly the pipes will kind of come apart because the building itself has been jiggling it apart.
You know, as a film buff, I watched some classic Hollywood movies in the 30s where they go over to Paris. You know, the swell set, you know, the rich Americans go over and they're complaining about the plumbing in Paris in the 1930s. So I think it's been around for a while.
Well, doesn't Emily has a plumbing issue, right?
Yeah.
In season 1?
Yeah, I think so. But I do want to add about what you just said, Adrian, because I forgot to mention that. I was going to say this in my talk. You know, when they gave us a less than a 24-hour notice about the lockdown the first time, right?
Mm-hmm.
They sent out the government, the bureaucracy was so in place that they, within just a couple of days, all my employees were on the partial unemployment, so that they all kept their salaries for the length of the time, up to 100% of their salary, some up to 80%, it depends how much they made. But it was already there. It was just boom, boom, boom. Bureaucracy was done. It was, you know, and I watched in the States as they were struggling, there was no one uniform way, and each state was different. And it's just not set up, the infrastructure that way. And so,
that's right.
You know, except for staff leaving on their own, no one lost their job. You know, everyone had their job the moment we opened again.
Well, so that's the other side of the administrative bureaucratic side of things.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be frustrating and make you crazy on one side, but on the other side, it can be very efficient and works really well. So it's.
Yeah. And all of us who've lived here and been through the healthcare, right? It's just.
Oh,
phenomenal.
yeah. Unbelievable.
It's all based on preventive care, all on preventive care.
I broke my ankle in the south of France. I could not believe how fabulous and affordable my healthcare was there. It was great. And I was taken to the hospital by ambulance, which I was told is free for everybody in France.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, if you're on the healthcare system, yeah, it would be. But I had an occasion to take a renter, someone in one of our apartments many years ago, by ambulance. And when we got to the hospital, the ambulance driver said, "So who's going to pay for the ambulance?" And I said, "So how much is it?" Okay, now I hope you're all sitting down, okay? Because it was a whopping 105 euros for the ambulance. And I just peeled it out of my wallet and paid it.
Yeah, 1,500 to 2,000 in the States, yeah.
Easy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Adrian, this is Carol. You may remember I broke my leg in Paris.
Yes.
And I mean, that ambulance was up from the American Cathedral to Hôpital Cochin was
Mhm.
$130.
Well, there you go. See,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
And for 6 days in the hospital, I had insurance, but for 6 days in the hospital, the whole thing came to about 10,000 euros, including the operation.
That's expensive.
Yeah, but in the US, it would have been 100,000.
Oh, easy. Oh, absolutely. You can pretty much count on the medical care being about 1/10 of what it is in the US. Pretty much across the board.
And then with your supplemental insurance, almost everything's covered anyway, you know, because almost
Oh,
everybody's
yeah.
supplemental insurance. So I pay €70 a month for supplemental insurance that covers me almost 100%.
Right.
I ought to say thank you for your help too at the same time.
Oh, pleasure all mine.
Susan Sindlinger has her hand up. You want to unmute and ask your question, Susan?
Hi, bonjour. It's so exciting to meet Craig and all of your family. I read both your books. I like literally sat down and read them cover to cover, like nonstop. They were so wonderful. I love Paris, and you just evoked all my great memories. I guess you kind of answered a question I had, like during the pandemic, they shut down Paris, right?
Yeah.
So I assume you weren't doing like takeout pancakes for your customers.
We have a funny story about that because, and Adrian loves it too. Our apartment, because our apartment was in process of being renovated by Adrian's wonderful designer.
Oh.
And so when it came, we couldn't move into the apartment. And I have this small little, they call them the chambre de bonne. It's like a petit à terre. It's like about 80 square feet.
Servants' quarters.
Yeah, like servants' quarters. I had a little one that I converted to an office, and Julie and I were staying there. And the night when they announced it, Julie said, "Wait a minute. If we stay here for God knows how many months, we'll kill each other. Why don't we go move into the diner?" So we moved into the second diner, the one you saw the picture of. And I sent Adrian a text saying, "Hey, I found the best place. You know, it's got a full kitchen, 3 dining rooms, 3 bathrooms. It's, you know,
a full fridge,
full fridge stocked to the gills." I mean, I can't believe it. She goes, "My God, where is it?" I said, "My restaurant." And so we went the first month, because that was the hardest month, and scariest month was for everyone around the world. It was that March into April. And one point, Julian said, "You know, we're here, we have the food. Why don't we try doing to go?" You know, there was only a couple places that were open, a couple pizza places, and that was it. There was pizza and a kebab, and that was it. And we opened up one of the first in the neighborhood, and that one has not closed since. Even during the second lockdown, we still did to go and delivery. And so that really psychologically was the best part of it, you know, because we got to see our neighbors and we become friends with so many of our neighbors who said it was so great to see you here and bring some life to the neighborhood. And, you know, they come out for their, you know, they could only come out for a half hour to an hour, and they'd swing by and get some food or call us up, and Julian would answer and take the order.
And you'd hang out in the windows upstairs and say hello.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was really great.
Do you have
an
apartment above the restaurant?
Yeah, there's an office. Actually, technically it's an apartment. It's one of those old-fashioned French places where, you know, they have the apartments above, but the only problem is you can't have access to it from anywhere except the kitchen. There's a little spiral staircase in the kitchen. So we've never been able to rent it out or do anything with it. So we turned it into an office. And so we just got an inflatable mattress and that was it. And just
turned it into home.
Stayed there for how many months? We stayed there until August.
Do you have a shower in there?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, for the staff shower. There was a staff shower. There was, you know.
You're very resourceful.
Yeah. I mean, God, $300 would have lasted me a year.
You wonder.
Now they're back in their gorgeous apartment, though.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Doug, yes.
Yeah, in your first book, you talked about opening more than just the 2. Did they ever get open, and what happened to them?
Yeah, I'll let Julian talk about that, because that was Julian's baby, you know, because if you read the first book, I was a bit exhausted just having 2. But there was a lot of demand. People were saying, when are you gonna open more? And Julian was happy to take that up. And so want to talk a little bit about that?
And so we decided to get this opportunity as a franchise to two of our cooks that have been working with us for more than 5 years. And so we did open the third one as a franchise in the second district in Paris. But I quickly realized that opening a diner in France requires more than just having the menu set up. You also need to understand the culture, because a diner is not just about food, it's about the atmosphere, it's about all the little things that you cannot see, but makes this place special. And so the human factor of this is very important. And unfortunately, those two cooks didn't have that human factor, so we could not continue.
I mean, in fairness to them, the Baclon happened relatively not long after they first opened. But the difference was both of the existing restaurants, we just had to up our game and come up with ways to get people in. And you just had to work that much harder to make it through those tough times. And I think they didn't realize, to be as fair as I can, I don't think they realized how much work was in the restaurant business. And even though I told them, your first 2 years expect to not have any life, it's even with the name Breakfast in America, because when he opened the doors, it was full. You don't have that happen. The reputation was there, but you have to keep at it to keep them full, and which means long days. Probably put that relationship on hold, which I did until I met Julian like 4 or 5 years into when I finally. It was a conscious decision. I'm like, okay, it's running now. I can actually go out there and maybe like date a little bit, and But so nobody ever believes you when they tell you when you tell them how much work a restaurant is, especially those first 2 years, even if it's a name already.
Yeah. Well, at least you've lived to talk about it.
Yes. It ended up in the third book right on time. Second book. In the first book, it ended up in the first book.
Interesting.
With that little slip, I guess.
Are you working on a third one?
There you go.
Maybe we'll see.
Yeah. Too late. You too late, Craig.
What I would rather do at the moment is do because I've been in negotiations for God knows a little too long, but a series based on the book. A little kind of Craig in Paris, if you will, instead of Emily in Paris. I think it'd be a lot of fun, and so we've been talking to a couple of producers for about a year now, trying to hack it out, and we'll see what happens. But that's the first thing on my plate right now. The next thing.
And who do you want to play you?
Well, originally I wanted Bradley Cooper, and Julian wanted to play himself.
I wouldn't mind.
Bradley Cooper. Okay.
And you want to play yourself?
Of course I would.
Okay.
Well, if you go on, it's easy to go on YouTube and you can see that Bradley Cooper actually speaks excellent French.
So he would be the perfect candidate.
And the resemblance, of course, is striking. So, hello. Well, maybe not. Susan, who wants to be
I love that. Susan says Susan who wants to be in Paris. Did you see her name came up?
Come over, Suzanne. We're waiting for you.
Melinda raising your hand?
Yeah, Melinda has her hand up.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to check in. I wanted to know about your inspiration for your restaurant. You, as a former USC student, I wondered if the inspiration was the original pantry downtown LA.
You haven't read the book?
I haven't, no, I'm excited.
Well, it is, it's in the book.
Oh my gosh, no, I just thought my husband was sitting behind me. He teaches in the business school at USC, but we live up in Marin County in north of San Francisco. But of course, the original pantry is the hangout for USC students. I don't think they have a key to the restaurant because it's open all the time. Right?
24 hours, yes, exactly. And so
that's why he had to go back to work, but I'll tell him, and we're going to get both of the books, and we can't wait to meet you.
Yeah, that was same here, and that was where I had my aha moment. And when we go back to LA, we always try to go over there.
Melinda is one of the new owners of La Lanterne, right, Melinda?
Yes.
So she's going to be a block away from you.
Yes. I kept telling my husband, we're going to be close by. We can't wait. And thank you, Patty. Thank you, Adrian. We're so excited.
It's the best neighborhood. It really is. It's just a great neighborhood.
Yes, it is.
Can't wait. Thank you.
We're doing another fractional property that's literally across the street from them, where you can, from the balcony, you're going to look down on the diner.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, one little fun side note. Do you know who used to own it for years and years?
On what?
On the
The pantry, it was Mayor Richard Riordan.
Oh,
The mayor of Los Angeles used to own the pantry for years and years and years. And I had a book event in Palm Springs and he showed up. He said, "Oh my God, Mayor Riordan, look, you're in my book." You know, and I showed him the passage. And the rumor was that that place hired ex-felons to work there. So I put that, the rumor has it that there, he goes, "Oh, everyone says that, there are no ex-felons." I was like, "Oops, I hope he doesn't sue me."
oh,
That's a great story.
oh, God.
Craig, we have a question from Tom Lang, and he wants to know if you thought about staying open 24 hours like IHOP.
My God, you see the rings in these, under these eyes?
Yeah.
I don't think you can legally, can you?
No, that's the thing. Because in the beginning, I toyed with the idea because that's what makes a diner, right? The 24-hour thing. And but when I came over and worked on after that TV show, and I came over to do research, I discovered there were maybe 2 or 3 places in all of Paris that had the right to be open 24 hours. One of them is the Pied de Cochon. Do you guys know the Pied de Cochon? It's in the Les Halles district. Oh, Mary.
Oh, Mary from Santa Barbara.
Mary from Santa Barbara. And so they have a night, because Les Halles, as we know, was the old market, which would be open 24 hours. So it's one of the leftover restaurants from that era, I believe, right?
There's another restaurant on Rue, I think on Rue Montmartre, right there, that's also a 24-hour restaurant for the same reason.
Yeah, I think it's impossible to get an actual permit to be open 24 hours. So, which is fine by me because we're already open 8:30 in the morning till 11 at night. So it's already a long, long day. So no need for 24 hours, right? We tried once opening at 5 in the morning, believe it or not, for people, for the kids that are partying all night and they come in. And you can imagine what kids who have drunk too much might do in the diner. We decided.
I don't want to imagine it.
Yes, exactly. We quickly changed our hours back to 8:30.
That's
Mary,
so
do you have a
funny.
question, Mary? Or do you want to say bonjour, belle maman?
Bonjour, bonjour, bonjour.
This is our friend Mary. She's in the first book.
Second book.
Second book. God, I'm all over the map here. Sorry. She's in the first chapter of the second book. So, voilà.
In what capacity? I don't remember.
Why don't you tell us quickly, Mary, what you.
Oh, I hope this works. I've never done this before. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Craig and I are both graduates of the University of Connecticut. I was in the program in Rouen many, many years before him. And I was in France in 68. So I was a genuine revolutionary. And I looked Craig up and I met him in Paris. And he discovered that I had some interesting thoughts about having been there during the revolution. And that was several years ago. And we've been great friends ever since they come to LA, and I live in Santa Barbara. And I go to Paris, so it's all good. So I was delighted and thrilled to be a subject in his book.
Do you all know about May 68, which the French called the revolution, the Revolution of May 68?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So,
I was
an actual eyewitness who was there as a student.
She wrote a thesis.
Yeah, and part of the same program, the very first year of the program that I participated in, some
years later.
Several years later. We won't say how many. Yes.
Several years later.
You have
I put a question in there. What because you're now a Frenchman. Congratulations. What was it like to vote as a Frenchman for the first time?
So yes, everyone, if you go on, you can see a picture of me holding up my voting card. I was so excited to vote. I heard that only like 20-something% of French people voted that round.
Yeah, really low.
It takes an American guy to vote in a French election. So, but it felt just wonderful just to have the voice, and Julian volunteered me to do some of the counting at the end, which is all, civic duty thing. You can volunteer.
I thought it would be a great experience for him. So I said he would do that with great pleasure. Please sign him.
So after the polls closed, I went back there and I sat at a table with 4 people, and each of us had a task to count to make sure there was no funny stuff. And nobody asked if I was legal with my accent or anything. It was quite nice. They were very nice to me and didn't ask if I was American or not. And it was quite interesting. It was democracy at work. It was lovely to see, and just and very, very simple. It doesn't have to be complicated voting. And here's the thing, guys, with all the controversy going on in the States, you know, where they're restricting voting and all this, the minute I got my passport, I didn't even have to register. I got the voting card in the mail. You know, you're ready to vote.
Oh, what a
It
concept.
seems like democracy pretty good. That's how it should be, no? That's my opinion. So there you go. Easy
Well,
enough.
Melissa has her.
Democracy in action.
Yeah, exactly. In a good way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, next one.
That me? Am I up?
Yeah, you're up.
Hi, Craig. It's
Hi, Melissa. Oh my God, from USC. Oh, representing, yeah.
from your past.
Yes.
I found out about this from my friend Kathleen, who wants to come live where you are. She's a big fan, so I thought I'd jump in and say hi and congratulations.
Oh, I'm so glad you did. Thank you.
Yeah,
Are you back in LA right now?
I am calling from Los Angeles, yes.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, well, first, good luck on your development deal. And I did want to ask, do movie companies have a 40-hour work week? Do you know about that?
No, they don't. I think that's one of those exceptions as well. I can't speak for all, but when I worked on that TV show, it was a mixed French-American team and no one counted their hours. Although the American producer wanted people to come in on weekends, even when they didn't have to. And that's where they drew the line. They're like, no, we can do this on Monday. We're good. And there is a funny story. The producer told me, I think I see it as a good thing. The actress who plays Emily, she decided she won't shoot on weekends. She only shoots in the weekdays. So good for her, right? And so they joke that she's become French now. So so that's why it worked for us too, because we never could have let them shoot on a weekend unless they paid us a lot of money, because that's our busiest day. So they came on a weekday, and that was great. And so although they probably could have afforded the weekend, no problem. So,
I don't know that, but maybe it'll be a regular spot on Monday.
what now? The what?
We all know that they could have afforded. Maybe they'll come and shoot there like more often. You know?
Exactly. Maybe it'll become part of the show. We'll see. Let's hope. But yeah, no, I'm fairly confident to say that I don't think they follow that as much. I think those in the artistic endeavors, you're more free to kind of do what you want, but you just kind of turn look the other way.
Yeah.
You know.
Right. Same here.
And let's not forget too. You know, I wrote 4 episodes for Alvin and the Chipmunks. Actually, it's a long story, but it's co-produced here in France. And they asked me at one point, the Writers Guild contacted me right away and said, we see you've written, because it's co-produced, these episodes. Do you want to have it through America or through France? Any potential royalties? That was an easy one. The author's rights here in France are so amazing. And every month, it's just 3 years ago I wrote these episodes. Every month, a few $100 comes into my bank account saying it showed in France, and so it showed in Canada, it showed in Germany, it showed whatever. I don't think I would even gotten close to that for animation in the States, because animation is very restricted.
Yeah,
so that's an example of how things are quite good here for the creative parts. And they have a special unemployment benefits for artists.
Is that so?
Yeah. So it's a special category.
Oh yeah, it's fabulous if you're an employee, but if you're an employer, it's the other story.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Thank you. Congratulations. And I wish you luck in your development deal. That'd be exciting.
Yeah, wouldn't it be? Thank you so much.
Also on the motorcycle, you should post your, I don't know if you have your film school movie, the
Wheel of Torture?
Yeah.
Yes, actually, you can see it on YouTube.
One of the funniest movies ever. You got to post it. It's a great film. I still remember it.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Plug. It's a good opportunity to let everyone know. Wheel of Torture is a short film I did as a thesis film at USC. And for those who are from Chicago, earlier a couple of people said from Chicago, it won an award at the Chicago Film Festival. And I went there to the Music Box Theater and saw my film on the big screen and with a full house and got an award, and it was the best thing ever. And
what's the name of it?
Huh?
What's the name of it?
It's called Wheel of Torture, and it's about how when I was a student at USC, I tried out for the Wheel of Fortune and got on. And back when you would buy prizes, not the cash part, and everything just went wrong. And it just didn't get the prizes I was supposed to, got the wrong car, had to pay taxes on everything. Here's the thing in France, on lotto, game shows, no taxes.
Of
You
course
know,
there's taxes.
you don't pay taxes if you win the lottery. You don't pay taxes if you're on a game show.
Mhm.
Wow, it's just the world's upside down sometimes.
It is. Put it up there. It still is one of my favorite film school movies.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
Oh, I'd love to see it.
Craig, it used to be on YouTube. Is it still on YouTube?
Yeah, it's
It
on
is
YouTube,
on
yeah.
YouTube, yeah.
It is?
The
Okay.
Wheel of
Try to find
Torture. Craig
Yeah, it's called,
Carlson.
yeah, so it's a Pancakes in Paris is the name of the YouTube channel.
Oh, it's on your channel. Okay.
Yeah. And, oh, thank you for posting that up. That's fun.
Thank you, buddy.
It's really awesome.
So someone just suggested that on an upcoming HGTV House Hunters International, we should film a scene in the diner, you know, which it's really not, it's all I have to do is recommend it and you guys will probably approve it. So.
Yeah, because sometimes you just need a place to chat, right? And it doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah, they're always looking for a place to meet up and talk and.
Yeah. Oh, you should do that. That'd be fun.
Yeah, I will. Next one up.
Especially like the woman that said earlier that she was in France and missed her breakfast, you know, the American. So I'm sure some of your clients miss a breakfast.
Oh, they'd love that. Yeah. Yeah, good. It's a good idea. I don't have much control over it though. You know, I just show up. Okay. But, but I can certainly suggest it.
Yeah.
Bill, you okay? We have 10 minutes left, you guys. So anybody, you know, this is your chance to ask questions.
Are any of you wondering how France is right now? I see the tourists coming back. I you know, it's a good place for me to be every weekend at the restaurant, and I can see more and more tourists coming from different countries, not just America. So that's nice to see. The newest, the president said yesterday, was it yesterday?
Yesterday,
that he may require proof of vaccination to go in bar and restaurants
in August.
In August, and I'm not
That's
against that.
gonna make you nuts.
Not necessarily. I think we'll see. But as you've heard, people crash the site trying to get on to
Yeah, but you're gonna have to check everybody's their certificates or their PCR tests. It's gonna be terrible.
I don't know. I think people get used to it. Just I think like carrying a mask. I think they'll just get used to it. They just flash
No,
their
you. It's gonna be a lot of work for you.
Right.
It is going to be.
And you're going to
especially on
lose business because the percentage of vaccinations in France is, you know, way lower than in the US.
That's what I'm saying. But I think it's going to really put fire under the feet to people to get it done, because we don't want to get closed again. The 2 times is traumatic enough.
But a lot of the young are anti-vaxxers. I think it's going to be tough. Personally,
Okay.
I think it's going to really be tough for everybody and for everything.
Yeah.
Because people who don't want to go have a PCR test, who are not vaccinated, are just going to avoid you.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just, you know, I'm worried about it.
Yeah.
And I personally don't think it's fair, but that's okay. You know.
So I have a quick question.
Meredith.
I'm in California, not in Paris. But what's happening in California, particularly in this in the Monterey area, which is a tourist area, is they cannot find staff.
Yes.
And when I ask people about it, they say, well, everyone wants to stay on unemployment. I'm not sure if that's really true or not. But how is that working in France? Did everyone come back to their jobs and love it? or is there a way they can stay on unemployment?
Well, I can just speak from experience. The cafes I hang out at and some certain restaurants, and they know I have a restaurant. They say, "Are you having trouble with personnel and finding personnel?" So it is coming up all the time, the subject matter. We're fortunate with the second restaurant because we stayed open during the confinement, doing the takeout and delivery. And so Julian had a clever idea of having every employee come at least 1 day a week. So we knew that they were around and that they were planning to stay. Because the biggest problem we had with the other restaurant is a lot of the young students, we have a lot of international students, they were getting their full unemployment benefits without telling us that someone had left the country, some had gone back to their schools, whatever. And not until it was time to come back to work, and we're like, okay, you ready? And like, oh, I'm not here anymore. But how long you been gone? It could have been several months. We don't know. And so that apparently was happening with a lot of people. But we've been able to staff. Some of folks that used to work with us in the past have come back, and some students. We're lucky that way. I think the more métier restaurants, where it's considered service is considered really a more high skilled job, they're having much more trouble. We're young and young people working, students, and we had high turnaround already, and so.
But I think Meredith's talking about the chômage partiel, right?
Well, I'm just curious how the states in France are different. I know France was much more generous with the unemployment benefits, but do people have to go back to work at a certain point?
What they have to, especially because, so May 19th, France reopened. And so June, you still had the same system of getting that partial unemployment. But as for July, August, that actually percentage of what you get is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking.
A lot, like 50% less and stuff. The only problem I've had too is, this has been an interesting one, is some of the staff, not all, some of the kitchen people, numbers haven't come back enough to put 2 or 3 kitchen people on, right? Because you only need 1 or 2 at that time. So thankfully, France says you don't have to, open the doors and have everyone back to their full hours again. And because all the employee costs and taxes on top of that would kill us, right? They said you can just do as many hours as you need them, and the other hours will cover, right? And so that's been great. But sometimes people will go. A couple of cooks have said, "But wait a minute, if I go in 20 hours a week, I'm getting the same as I was without going in 20 hours a week." And we're like, no, you're looking at this maybe the other wrong way. You got to stay home for 7 months and get fully paid. Now you need to come back to work. But they have to. They can't just say, no, I'm staying home and collecting.
No, I would imagine not.
No.
Okay. Just as a reminder, we're down to 4 minutes, and I want everybody, just to remind everyone that we are recording this, and we are going to make the link available so that the people who weren't able to get on can watch it. Okay, watch the whole thing.
If you see the Emily shot, don't
tell anybody.
don't save it and share it. You can look at it, just don't save it and share it.
On that last question that you were talking about, are you asking people to be vaccinated, or what are there any requirements in that regard from an employer's standpoint?
I know they just did it for the healthcare industry.
It's right, mandatory for healthcare workers.
I know we all our staff did it on their own, right? I mean, we didn't have to ask anyone to do it. They were happy to get it, because the restaurant business, of course, you're total exposure to people all day long, and so they get that, and so and they were all very careful during before the vaccine was available. The mask and always washing their hands. I mean, on their own, we didn't even have to keep on top of them, right?
No,
it was quite good. Mm-hmm. So, but no, we didn't ask or require. No. But I don't think France. I think it's only the healthcare industry that they're requiring.
Right now, it's right. It's only healthcare workers that are where it's mandatory. Mm-hmm. But you're not going to be able to enter basic things without a PCR test or the vaccination or proof of vaccination.
Yeah.
Craig, are you masking up at the restaurant?
Oh yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, all employees are masked. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And how are people behaving between when they're not actually eating? Are they wearing their masks? Guests.
When they're not eating, no.
Not if they're outside.
No, but inside too. If they're not eating, if they sit down and they finish their meal, do they put it back on? No, not at the moment.
Yeah, that's how it is. I was in Pennsylvania during the pandemic. I happened to be there to take care of my mom. And I happened to be there the year before, and I was working at a bar when the shutdown happened. And then I came back to work, and people were so misbehaving. I had a panic attack all day. I quit. I'm like, I'm sorry, I cannot be there.
I had a friend in New York who did the same thing. Yeah, because he just couldn't.
So I just want to get it out there for the service industry in some states. I'm looking. you know, I'm looking elsewhere. I would like to go back to the bar business, but people do not behave, and I'm frankly still kind of freaked out by it.
Yeah, naturally, yeah.
So just to say, it's hard, you know. I love the bar that I worked at, you know, it was a little ski resort in Pennsylvania, but
I take the risk, yeah.
and no air circulation, it was horrible. So I'm sure you have a lot.
Well, the numbers got really far down here. Like a week or so ago, they were as low as 500 people in the entire country that had of new cases. So that's like amazing. But the variant is bringing the numbers back up, and that's what they're so concerned about.
Yeah, it's already driving numbers here in every state.
Right.
Really is. And I'm surprised that the vaccine, I'm sorry about my dog barking. I'm sorry. I'm surprised that the number of vaccines are lower in France. I really did not realize there was an anti-vax movement.
Yeah.
Major, big one.
Sorry.
Yeah. We are now at 8 o'clock. So I am going to say thank you to everyone for joining us. And I want to also thank a big thank you to Craig and of course, Julianne and Elizabeth, because you have totally held everybody's interest for a solid 2 hours, which is amazing. And I would also like to tell you that the participation stayed very high throughout the entire 2 hours, which is, you know, like saying a lot, because a lot of people tend to fade away at the end. But so it was lots and lots of fun. You are always one of my favorite guests, and you're always welcome to come back. Always.
Thank you.
And I want to wish everyone a very happy July 14th, Bastille Day.
Yay!
And so thank you all, and we'll see you not in August, because we don't do an Après-Midi in August, but we will be back in September. And I'm not sure if we're going to be doing a Zoom in September or just live. I'm hoping to do a live and a Zoom at the same time, if it's possible. So stay tuned for more information on that. And Elizabeth, I would like to please taste your frog's legs at some point. Ok, gardez 2 ou 3 pour moi, s'il te plaît.
On va les amener demain, ouais.
Demain, oui. Oh, c'est très gentil, madame. Oh là 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 là. Okay, thank you one and all. Happy rest of week and holiday. And thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank
Bye,
you.
Merci, au revoir.
Au revoir.
Bisous à tous.
Oui.
Merci.